Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Arm Training channel. Today we help John. John rows at Occoquan, a place I've raced before as well in the 8. John is experimenting with sitting tall and sitting round. He's not quite sure what actually works better. The other thing you need to know is that John has just been rowing for 3 years, and it's pretty amazing. Rowing like that after 3 years is special and you're doing very well. Now, a lot of people are in the same situation. Should you sit tall or should you sit round? And the answer is none of it, because you should do both. And this is exactly what we're going to work on today. So this is where you sit tall. That means you stiffen up the entire torso. You go from here, a nice back, the low back is stable, but the upper torso is stable as well. And stable in the upper torso is good, but stiff is not good. But you're doing exactly what almost everybody does. When a call comes, sit tall, what do? We stiffen up the torso, and that's not what we should be doing. On a Biorower, I'm going to elaborate how to change this. Because effectively, I want you to be stable in the low torso, but not in the upper torso. And the trick is not even to focus too much on the back. The trick is to focus on the psoas muscle. What is the psoas muscle? Hip flexors. Essentially hip flexors. Because the hip flexors actually connect to the spine, and the front of your torso is responsible for how stable your back is. Sounds weird, but this is exactly what it's like. There's always an influence, front to back and back to front. But I will explain this on a Biorower just in a moment. So, sitting tall is good for the low back, but not for the upper back, because if you don't suspend, you cannot use your body weight. Therefore, you will always trail behind in terms of the speed you could be generating. You could be much faster. If you're tall, your arms are too stiff, and you don't really suspend. You see that your upper body is rotating around the spine. So, the entire torso is going up because you are now rotating around the hip joint. To make this a bit better visible, here's the hip joint, and you're rotating the entire torso, one thing, around. That means initially it's going up a bit. If the shoulders go up, the hands go up. If the hands go up, because there's an oar-lock, changes the direction, the blades will go deeper. That means you create a lot of slip on the blade, because if the blade is going deeper while you're starting to drive, a lot of water passes the blade underneath and above it. So of course you don't have a proper lock on the water. And the result of this is because your upper torso is too stiff. Therefore, we cannot afford an upper torso that is too stiff. However, at the same time, we do need a low torso that is stable. So in this case, you have a beautiful low torso that is fairly stable. But one thing doesn't have to do much with the other, because having a stable low torso actually doesn't depend as much on the back as you think it does. But you appear to be trying to keep the torso long by using the superficial muscles of your back. So the erector spinae, possibly the traps a bit in the upper section, and potentially even the lats a bit. Why do I say the latissimus? Because you are not suspending the lats. They're too tight. So by sitting too tall, you're falling for the classic trap of being overbraced. And overbracing is one of the classic beginner's mistakes. A lot of viewers probably don't know this, but I coach a lot of people online, and I coach them online on their Biorowers, on their linear drive rowing machines, but also on the water. I coach people online on the water. We mount a phone on the rigger, and through Zoom, I see them every single stroke. I don't just coach professional rowers, I also coach masters beginners. They want to become competitive, they need a coach with them all the time, so they take me along. The good thing is that you have a coach next to you every single stroke. This is more coaching that most of you will probably ever get. And one of the first things I teach my athletes is not to suspend the shoulders, but to suspend the latissimus dorsi. So the shoulders are essentially something we actually try to bypass. That means we're going from the hands straight into the lats. You see that? Right that point here? This is where the lat attaches. A simple Google search will take you to this picture right here. The latissimus dorsi. The latissimus dorsi attaches on the upper arm. And that's what a lot of people don't know. And it stretches down into right in between your pelvis. and it merges right in between the bottom tip of your shoulder blades. So this is like the perfect muscle for suspension. If this one is too tight, that's the classic position where your arms are then too tight. I will show you this on a Biorower, the entire explanation just in a moment. I have a Biorower rigged for sculling. It's exactly like a boat cockpit. It feels like a boat, and you will see exactly what I mean. So if this one is too stiff, you cannot really transfer weight. If your lats are too stiff, you cannot generate momentum. And leverage and momentum is exactly what makes rowing fast. That's important for you to understand. If you are a new rower, it's not so much about the motion you perform. That's one of the first things I really try to instill into my athletes' heads and minds and bodies in terms of muscle memory pattern. You want to create leverage and momentum. And of course there is a visible motion, but the motion is a product of what we try to achieve. That's exactly what we focused on, by the way, in the last Saturday Zoom class. Anyone can join. It's a couple bucks a month, rmtraining.com, 45 minutes every Saturday. This is where we worked on exactly that. How do you generate that kind of momentum? And it happens even before the catch. See, when you go forward, let me go back a couple of frames so you see this. So that's the phase right before the catch. Here, you cannot be too stiff in your arms, but because your entire torso is too stiff. Is that logical? Here, the entire torso is too stiff. So your arms are stiff as well, because your arms actually are much more influenced by what happens in your back and in the front of your torso. So the deep muscles in between, that's actually the relevant part, than, let's say, using your biceps or forearm muscles alone. So now you have a lot of stiffness down because you want to push your upper body. If it's too stiff, rotates forward. See this? Around, let me pick a different color. So a very stiff torso. So of course the torso is going to go in the radius. The shoulders is going to go up and down. It's like tap, tap, you pop, pop. It's always up and down because you're not having a flexible upper torso, which you would actually need. So because you don't have this, of course your arms go down. If the arms go down, and we have the oarlock here, the blades go up. Well, this is how you come into the catch. When you start the drive, the opposite is the case. So let's see what this looks like. A couple frames later, how do you get rid of that tension? Because your arms are stiff, pushing down. Here, what happens is that you have to open the upper body up. You have to get rid of that weight on the handles because you want to now suspend. You want to pull on the handles. And suspension is not possible if you're in bracing mode for pushing. So you have to loosen up first. You have to start to suspend. The muscles have to relax and firm up again. There's no time for that. You should have done this on the way to the catch, but you didn't. So this is what takes so long. And now, of course, because your hands dip down just before the catch, they have to go back up just to find connection. And this is why it takes you so long to stabilize the blade vertically in the water. Because if your hands go back up, your blades go down. Okay, let's illustrate this once more. The entire torso, because it's tall and stiff, rotates around the hip joint. That means the shoulders are going up. If the shoulders are going up, the hands are going up. If the hands are going up, the blades are going down. And if the blades are consistently going down, see, this is draw blade. It's not a very beautiful blade, sorry. So here's the oar. If your blade is going down, you generate a lot of slip on the blade. That means your blade never gets a proper lock on the water. And this means the moment you actually find proper lock on the water, this is when you're going to be overwhelmed by the resistance you've found. Imagine it like sitting on a skateboard. You sit on a skateboard and you want to pretend you row. So what do? You put the hands on the floor and then you push yourself off the floor. You want to generate a lock. You want to generate so much friction with your hands on the floor so that you have enough support to push yourself back. Same principle in the boat. Would you say, no, my goal is that I want to move my hands as quickly as possible over the floor, over the concrete, because this will accelerate my skateboard the most? Of course not. This is basic physics. You want to have calm hands to have maximum support, naturally. So why would you try to get your blades as quickly through the water as possible? It doesn't make any sense. So this is exactly, though, what happens the moment you don't let the blade rest vertically as stable as possible. That's the only reason why the Randall foil makes you 3, 4, 5, 6% faster, which is insane for rowing terms. They have their downsides as well, and some people have issues in choppy conditions that they catch waves. Nevertheless, the data shows you're still faster. Ricardo Cardoso, University of Porto, actually made a proper scientific study where he analyzed all data. And the conclusion is obvious. It cannot be any other way. If your blade is stopped from going deeper than it should, you're going to have sooner lock on the water, therefore better propulsion of the boat. It's as simple as this. So, if you don't have foils here, you can still do this. You just need to make sure that your blades don't dig deeper than they should. Simple experiment. You put the blades squared into the water. Then you let them rest where they are. You don't interfere vertically with the handles. And in that situation, you will see that just the top edge of the blade is going to peek out. Not much, just a tiny bit. The moment you apply force, the geometry of the blade is designed so well that it sucks itself just to underneath the water surface. And that is it. Naturally, by design, it won't go any deeper, provided you have the proper pitch on the blade that the blade or the oar manufacturer requires for that specific blade shape. So pitching your boat is extremely important. If you want to know how to pitch your blade and how this works, drop me a line in the comments, and if there are enough people interested in that, I happily make a dedicated video to explain how this works, because it's simple. It's very simple, but you need to be able to do this. Every rower should know how this works.
So, Blätter locker stehen lassen, nicht vertikal beeinflussen. Kein Gewicht auf den Griffen. So, und jetzt gut aus den Beinen den Druck am Blatt finden.
Now let's see what it looks like when John is rowing relaxed. On the way forward, this is a much better position because now you have fairly loose wrists, fairly heavy elbows. People underestimate how important this specific factor is. Hugely important. Relaxing your wrists and elbows is, for me, the most important thing when I come out of the finished position. But the issue with the blade control is still prevalent. You are not getting the blades off the water properly. I understand though, that boat is simply too light for you. It sits way too low in the water. I think you need a heavier boat because this one is simply, look at that. It's almost a submarine. Maybe you can try to get a heavier boat and rig it higher. This boat is rigged too low for you. It feels super stable. I understand why it's comfortable to row this, because there's so much embedded surface. It feels rock solid. However, in choppy conditions, you will have issues. So it's probably not good to do this. I might be wrong with my conclusion though, because that red might be deceiving and actually there might be enough hull outside the water. I'm not too sure though. So the roundness is good. You start with loose wrists. This is where you could relax your wrists a bit more. However, at that stage, there's quite a bit of gap between the left and right hand. Keep the hands together. The moment you come forward, keep your hands together. I'll explain on a Biorower in a minute how I want this to be. So now when you roll forward, at that stage, you don't need to extend your arms anymore, but you can. You can go up to 80%, 90% extension, but still keep a bit of looseness in the wrists and elbows. For me, it feels like doing that. And now my elbows start to pull on the lats. And the moment I bend my knees, this is when I want the hip flexors to become long. So if you're round and loose, which is the way to row in my opinion, it does not mean that the pelvis should be tilted backward. So what I don't want is the pelvis to be tilted this way. I want it to be at least upright. At the moment it looks good. We'll see what it looks like when you are in the catch position. Same issue. See, at that stage, you should have the final forward lean angle of your upper body. If you continue to lean more and more forward as you reach the catch, you put a lot of weight on the hands, and then you got the same issue as before. It's just too stiff. At that stage, the blades should be that close to the water. So before, here, this is where you need blade clearance of a full blade height plus a half. Feels absurd when you do this for the first time, but trust me, it's worth it. And Here, you should slowly, like an airplane landing, slowly approach the runway until you are very, very precisely placing your blade just at the touchdown zone. And it's way too, this is like, if this were an airplane, this were a crash landing, and you really don't want to crash land your airplane. Here at that stage, even though you're loose, you're still accustomed to that stiffness here. And what I actually want at that stage is not to be too stiff. I want to lengthen out the torso a bit. You can actually give around the shoulder blades a tiny bit. However, the suspension is much better than it was when you were stiffer. So the roundish position is better. It's definitely better. It's smoother. It doesn't disturb the boat so much, but you are neglecting 2-3 very important points. And one of the most important points is that you're not using deep muscle strength. You're really just using superficial muscles. What is beautiful is when you're round and loose, this acceleration here, you can bend your arms, that's fine. As long as you suspend from the lats, that's the important bit. So the acceleration is much better. You prolong the drive much better. Wow. Beautiful to watch. Beautiful. This is how you should be rowing. But I think even though it feels round, where you are round is the low back. This is where it should not be round. You're not too stiff in the upper torso. That's the big change. But you're still not suspended enough. So let me hop on a Biorower Pro and show you exactly what I mean. Because I don't think you're missing much. You're that close. That's a Biorower Pro, the world's best rowing machine. I keep on saying this because it is. Show me anything that's better. A 159.6 spread, so roughly 160 if you want it that way. Inboards adjustable, set to 87 centimeters. Oar handles rotates. This thing can tilt. I set it to be stable because it's easier to show you guys what's going on. And of course, always on slides. If I pull too early with the right hand, the left hand goes empty. If I pull too early with the left, the right hand goes empty. If my hands go up at the catch, John, it's your issue. Then I have a lack of resistance because it only picks up what actually propels the boat, horizontal resistance. And this is something you feel, we call it mechanic feedback. That's how the transmission is built. This thing is built like a watch, but car transmission durability-wise, it's crazy. This transmission is good for 2,500 Newton meters of torque. That's semi-truck territory. And when you go up with your hands at the catch, you are missing connection. I showed you the same thing with the Harvard video. This is how this works. So let me wiggle up and down. Every time I wiggle up and down, you're missing horizontal connection. Because here are strain gauges, and they pick up what you do. So if I'm stable, I have stable force. If my hands go up and down, I'm missing resistance. So the stability of my hands, which is the ultimate important thing in the boat, is picked up here directly. That's what makes you fast. The handle height itself is not that important if you pull low or high, because this is completely independent on the Biorower. You can pull wherever you want, but it's got to be stable. And it's the same thing for the boat. You can adjust the oar locks in a boat as you want, just like you can adjust the oar lock height here too, as you can adjust the spread. Just saying, the perfect handle height for me is pretty high. It is exactly where my lats merge at the back, so the bottom of my shoulder blades. So my handle height should actually be just where my lats are at the bottom tip of my shoulder blades. This is where they match. This is how I like to position my hands. So I want to set up the boat so that when I'm pulling at that height, that I'm not digging too deep. That if I let my blades rest where they want to rest, this should be exactly the height I'm pulling. Now on a Biorower, you can find the perfect height for you and then adjust it accordingly in the boat. Now, John, your issue when you start to push is that you go up. So you have this little wiggle here at the beginning of the curve. Let's see if I can fake it. It looks a bit like this. Because you're not connecting horizontally. What I want is a force pickup like that. And for this, you need to lengthen out the lats. Because if you come into the catch like that, you're not suspended. You're stiff. You're overbraced. That's a classic beginner's mistake, that we tend to overbrace and deadlift everything. That's not fast. You're fast when you imagine you're pulling a truck. Oh, yep. And that's why it was smoother when you were rounder. So at the catch, at that phase, I actually want to give a tiny bit so that my arms can go together, because that's the big issue with linear drive rowing machines. If you learn on these, you never ever understand that the oars are going perpendicular. So they're going in and out, and they're going in and out. And if you do this simultaneously, then you end up with a force curve like this, which is close to perfection. I want a plateau, but for that, I need to apply force always in a 90-degree angle. Always like that, like that, like that, like that, and now out. I cannot afford to be stiff and tall, because this way I appear to be going through the motion correctly, but I'm like Pinocchio. I'm made of wood, and you don't want to roll like him. The idea is that you become heavy and loose. So most people then start to become round, completely round. That's also not good, because now your low back is gonna be ineffective. In a real boat environment, like in a Biorower, you can't hurt yourself, even that way. But it's better if you try to make your hip flexors long. The hip flexors. This is that pit. You see that belt? It's this bit right here. I imagine that my belt needs to be angled and pulled up. So if you do this, then you end up with perfectly stable spine. Why? Because these muscles, or the psoas especially, attaches the spine. So this, pulling your hip flexors long and up, so I'm trying to go up and forward, makes my spine stable. So it's a little bit of pushing the back forward, but it's mostly trying to control the hip flexors. So the perception is that I'm tall here, but I'm relaxed in my shoulders. Simple exercise for you at home. Go into half slide, stable back, put your hands on your shoulders, relax your wrists and elbows, drop your shoulders. Relax, stable, relax, stable. Still full weight on your knees. That is how you control that. So you're stable down low, but you're still heavy and relaxed here so that you can pull the lat forward. That's the idea. Now let me show you the sequence from the finish forward. Here, my hands are almost the same height. Now I tap down. Now the left hand leads out first, the right hand trails behind. Now I put a lead lag, I put my right knuckle on at the bottom of my left wrist, right here. And now I push down, I control with the thumb on the inside, and I push down with the outer edge of my hands, so it's that way. And my hands are like glued together. They relax. I relax my wrists, therefore my elbows relax. And in that position, I pull my lats forward. The moment I feel the stretch in my lats, I actively make my hip flexors long and bend my knees at the same time. So now I'm relaxed at the top, but I'm stable down low. Takes a bit of getting used to it, but it's the most effective way to row. Because now, look at the Biorower from the top. Now I pull the boat rather than moving myself forward. Because you want to move the boat twice. You want to accelerate it here, the blade, and now you want to move it forward again. So, left hand forward, right hand sneaks behind it, lead lag, hands together, loose wrists and elbows, pull on your lats, make the hip flexors long. As you reach the catch, focus on making hip flexors long, tall, still relaxed. At that position, I should be able to let go of my hands, put my hands on the knees, and I'm still relaxed. Reach forward with the push, lengthen the lats, but make sure your hip flexors remain long, and now you have this beautiful whip. And at the finish, the last bit of information for you, I'm dumping the whole load today, sorry John, but as you're close to making it, at the finish, try to sit tall by pushing the abs forward, making the obliques long. Don't try to bring your chest out. Don't lean back too much. Always try to have a bit of contact on the foot stretchers. It can be push or pull, I don't care. But make sure your abs come out. Bah. So it's like pushing the feet away until the last moment. Chuck control. And then relax on the way forward. Stable. Long. Sa. To me, it always feels like I'm not tilting like Pinocchio. I'm being long, round, stable. Round, tall. Always with the caveat that my low torso cannot be too round. So with this, I think you have a beautiful, soft, smooth, very nice, elegant stroke that's just fun to row. Loose. All right, this is the Biorower Pro. It is the best rowing machine you can buy. It replaces a couple of boats because you can row this thing whenever you want. You don't depend on any outside circumstances. You can share it with others. You can teach people how to row properly. If you're interested, biorower.com. If you want to be coached by me, go to armtraining.com. I have training programs that include the group classes as well as one-on-one sessions, and I write very comprehensive training plans. They include strength, mobilization, stretching, and especially very, very structured cardiovascular development. So you are ready for your next peak of season. armtraining.com is the website. With this being said, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with somebody, say, hey, did you see this? Maybe you should think about that as well. Do me a favor, subscribe and hit the notification bell, because a lot of my subscribers don't see the videos when I upload them. So if you don't hit the notification bell, you're missing the videos. I value your feedback. I will put this video on the rowing.zone. My handle is @arm. What is your opinion? What is your experience? I'm very curious to know. With this being said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the very next video. By the way, if you want to send me your footage, send an email to video@armtraining.com, permission to use it on YouTube, and I happily do a community analysis. I also do private video analysis as a paid service. All the info is on armtraining.com. Now, I'll see you in the next video. Cheers, bye-bye.